the benefits, everything about Nestle's was incredible. Not many people know this, but Nestle's is probably one of the largest companies in the world. Any women in here use Lancome makeup? Bet you didn't know that Nestle's owned it. Any of you drink Perrier? Probably don't know that Nestle's owns them. How many of you have pets? A good number of the dog foods and everything else are made by Nestle's. Most people think of Nestle's as a chocolate company, right? If you go to the movie theater, most of all of the non-chocolate candy is all owned. It's a company called Sunmark or something like that, but it's owned by Nestle's. Nestle's owned, at one time, I don't know if they still do, but they owned Eveready, Battery, Goodrich, the tire company, huge company, but great company to work for. Anyway, Stouffer Hotels was really a luxury brand. It was a fun company to work for. Unfortunately, they sold the company to a Chinese gentleman called Henry Chang. He owns half of Hong Kong, and he owned Renaissance Hotels at the time. And you all are too young to remember, but Renaissance really kind of came from Ramada. It was a Ramada kind of upgrade. It was kind of their high-end brand, but the problem was they never really got away from the stigma of it just being a Ramada. So they were struggling at that time with that brand. So they thought by combining Stouffer's and Renaissance that they could really upgrade the Renaissance brand, and that was their thought process at the time. And I think they probably did upgrade Renaissance, but I think they also downgraded what was Stouffer at the same time, which was unfortunate. Probably a couple of years, I had already left the company, but a few years after that, then Marriott bought, I think it was 49% of Renaissance. Renaissance was owned outright by Henry Chang. He owned the whole hotel company. And he sold 49% of the company to Marriott. And then that's when Renaissance became part of Marriott, and I think they did away with Ramada, and so that's kind of how that story went. But in that whole process, at the time, I was working at the Stouffer Harbor place, and from there I went to St. Louis with Stouffer's, then to LA with Stouffer's. I was at LAX, and then the company was being sold. I left and I joined a really fun company called Medallion Hotels. The Medallion Hotels was owned by a guy named Chuck Feeney, and Chuck Feeney owns Duty Free Stores International. Probably one of the wealthiest people in the world. If you've traveled and you've gone to airports and you see duty free stores, he owned all of that. Very wealthy guy, very nice. I had the pleasure of working for him for about 2 years, and then I joined Westin after that. The hotel that I was in was going to become a Westin, but it was going to be a franchise. I didn't want to be in a franchise. And from there, I went to the Westin Galleria in Oaks in Houston. It was an 800-room hotel. At the time, it was the highest EBITDA producer for Starwood, was the Westin Galleria in Oaks in Houston. And then from there, I went to San Antonio, and I opened the Westin San Antonio, and was there for about 2 years. Quick funny story, so I have a son. He went to this program here. He grew up in hotels, and every Sunday, he and I would get up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and we would order room service and watch cartoons together. And we'd order pancakes and stuff from room service. So he grew up with room service and maid service in a hotel his whole life. When I moved to San Antonio, it was his first time ever living in a house. Our very first weekend in that house was on Halloween, the Halloween weekend. On Sunday morning, he came and tapped on my shoulder about 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Dad, let's go downstairs and order room service and watch cartoons. And I looked over at my then wife, I'm now divorced, but I looked at my then wife and I looked back at him and I said, room service is still asleep. And that was his rude awakening that there is no room service in a house and there's no maid service. But from San Antonio, I was supposed to go to San Diego to open the Westin Riverwalk in San Antonio. And I got made an offer I couldn't refuse, and I moved to Mexico. I became a regional director for Posadas, Fiesta Americana hotels. Anybody here know Mexico very well? No one? So my region, I had the worst region in the company. The company had 82 hotels, I had 14 hotels. My 14 hotels were in Veracruz, Jalapa, Mérida, Cancun, Cozumel, Iztapa, Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta. That was my region. Who thinks that was a bad region? I had all the best resort destinations with my region. So Puerto Vallarta, Acapulco, Cancun, Cozumel, all great resort destinations. The sad part about it was that there were many times that I would fly to the hotel, get there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd pick me up at the airport, I'd go to the hotel, be in meetings. The next morning, I'd meet with the staff and everybody else, take a car to the airport, get on the plane and leave. And the only time I saw the beach was from the plane taking off and landing. So it's not as nice as it sounds. But I did live in Mexico and I did go to the beach a lot. I love Mexico, great country. Anyway, back in 2002, I was at a funeral, and sitting next to me at the funeral was a gentleman by the name of Marty Bells. Anybody here from Memphis? Oh, Memphians? Couple? Few? Have you ever heard the Bells name, Bells family? They own half of downtown and Olive Branch Airport and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, Marty Bells was sitting next to me. They owned the Peabody. And we became friends. A year later, he reached out to me and he said, Doug, why don't you come and talk to me? We would like you to come and run the Peabody in Memphis. And I said, respectfully, Mr. Bells, I would love to come and talk to you, and I'd love a free trip to Memphis, but I don't think you can afford me, and I'm not sure that I really want to move to Memphis. And he said, well, don't jump to conclusions. We probably can't afford you, so why don't you come and take me up on that free trip? So I did fly to Memphis. I met with him, and of course, here I am 17 years later. I really thought I'd be here for a couple of years, but I fell in love with Memphis. I've made some of the greatest friends in Memphis. I love it. I love my job. I love the owners. Great family. And so that's kind of my career. That's what I've done. I've been here for the last 17 years. About 4 years ago, we sold the Orlando Peabody for $720 million. I was vice president of the company at the time. We sold Little Rock. I was put in charge of selling all of their franchise properties. Not many people know this, but the Bells family at one time was the largest Holiday Inn franchisee. They were close with the Kemmons Wilson family, but my task was to sell all of their non-Peabody hotels, which they had Holiday Inns, Hiltons, Hamptons, and I sold them faster than I probably should have. All of a sudden, we're down to one hotel. The president of the company retires, and I'm thinking I'm vice president of nothing. And so I put together a presentation and a proposal of how I could improve my job, and went to the Bells and explained to them why they should make me president of the company of one hotel, and how I was going to make them a lot of money. And they said, okay. And they gave me the right to use the Peabody name and helped me put together a brand management company, gave me the money to do it. And so we've gone out and are now looking to build and create other Peabodys But for the first time in the history of Peabody, they're actually owned by other people, but we manage and brand them. So it has to be under our standards, our rules, and everything else. And if we go, the name goes. Right now we have 5, possibly 6 projects out there in the works. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. I hate politics, although I'm always in the thick of it, but I hate it. What else? So open it up for questions? Or did I miss something you want me to talk about?
You touched on everything. Anybody like to hear a little bit about your Memphis in May board tenure?
So let me back up. The question that comes up, I speak at a lot of other stuff, chamber and stuff. I'm the vice chair of the chamber, but everybody's question is what's going to happen with the economy. Most analysts and most people with FedEx, top people, all say that a recession is not coming, that what is coming is what they're calling a slowdown, which is very different than a recession. And to me, kind of the same thing, but it's really something completely different. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter. The analysts all say that if Trump wins, the economy keeps going. If the Democrats win, they're